By the Edge of the Sword. This is a wargame system that I had not played in a while. I used to play it quite some time ago. I played it quite a while. The first times that I started making video reviews around 2010, 11, 12. And then life happens, so we get busy, other stuff is published, and I hadn't played games in the system for quite a while. So I was happy when I got a chance of playing a new game that came out in the system. Also, I'm not sure that many came out that were available in the English language in the last year or two. This set is called Heroes and Kings, and it is available in English and in French. You get the rules in both languages, the components, the few words on the counters are in French, but you're going to figure out what those means, what those mean. It is a system that I like quite a bit because it has a really satisfying level of detail, and it feels right thematically, historically, contextually, while at the same time remaining very playable, very simple, very accessible even to new players, and also to newer gamers, and also definitely very solitaire friendly. In fact, I played all of the battles in this set in solitaire format, playing both sides at the best of my possibilities, and I had a really good time playing them. This is a set with 4 battles. They come from French Middle Ages. They're not the most famous battles out there. In fact, I learned about the existence of some of them from this war game, which is just a nice extra bonus for when you're playing a war game. So what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna show you the components, give you a sense of how the 4 scenarios that come in this package work, and then a general overview of the game system in case you haven't seen my old videos in which I covered the game system in general, or you haven't watched them in a while, which may happen because they're not particularly new, not recent. So without further ado, let's start taking a closer look at Heroes and Kings. The game comes in this cardboard folder here. And then what you find in it is the rulebook in 2 versions, English and French. Also the rulebook contains the scenarios, very well done, very well explained, a lot of interesting historical information, which you may need because I'm not sure that all these battles are very well known outside of France. At least I've learned about that for the first time in this in this set of scenarios here. The rules also are well explained. I hadn't played the system in a while. I just read through them again and I was ready to go. Then we have a player aid, again also in French and in English, so you only need one side to play, so that gives you a sense of how many tables and charts you'll need to reference. Then we have counters. The counter tray is not included, I added it. As for other games by Vivictus, if you know their quality, you know that the counters look great. Maybe the portraits of the leaders look a little cartoonish, but hey, if I like this kind of cartoon, definitely. And then in general, just very nice counters, also thick, very sturdy. One minor minus here is that the counters have 2 sides. One is with the unit in good state and the other one with a unit in fatigue state, as indicated by that white stripe there. With these light blue counters, that's not much of a problem. With these white counters or very incredibly light gray counter to the point it kind of looks white, well, telling the 2 sides apart is not that easy. Can you tell that that side has a white stripe running through it? Probably, because I told you and we were paying attention to it, but as you're playing the game, it's not that easy to tell apart. I wish they had marked the 2 different situations, conditions of the unit differently, but otherwise than that, very nice counters. And then we have 2 double-sided maps. And since we're there, we can just have a look at them. I can also give you a sense of the scenarios, what to expect and how they play and what the dynamics are. Now, this is Valedune 1047. It's a very basic standard scenario. It's great if you haven't played the game yet, or like in my case, you hadn't played it in a while. It's a good beginning scenario. It's very classic in the sense that the 2 sides are facing each other in 2 lines. There's a bit of variety because there is a group that can enter from here, support on this side here, and it's variable entry. So whether they enter or not, and when they enter, can make a big difference when this side is attacking and may or may not be outflanked. There also is a variant scenario in which you can decide to assign actual control to one of the players to that group. So just very simple: go against one another, fight it out, become familiar again with the system, and just have fun doing it. Kosherel 1364, very interesting situation here because it represents an ambush. One side is traveling south, trying to cross this river here, but the other side had a small group of people waiting here. So basically, as the scenario starts, this group is attacking the enemy, and the enemy is facing this way. Now, in this game, orientation matters, so attacking enemies from the rear hex sides really gives you sweet bonuses. That means that this group, which is outnumbered, is going to inflict as hard and damaging a hit as possible. The other group is scrambling around, spending a lot of movement points, just reorienting and figuring out to try to switch all in one direction. They break, they try to surround the enemy. It's a very interesting situation and dynamic there. Then we have Viborg to 1242. It is the one with more freedom of setup. We have an army here waiting for the enemy to cross the river, but the enemy can set up anywhere around here, and they can also place their pontoons in different positions as they are waiting here to attack from wherever it is that they're going to debark and cross. So you can just experiment from a major single attack, from splitting your units around a little bit. The fight will happen here, but there will be attempts of outflanking or breaking through the front in different ways. So this is the one to me that has the most replay value. The other ones too, but this one feels has more freedom. And finally, we have Bataille 1429. We have the English that set up around here, I would say, and they are outnumbered already at the beginning of the game. The French have a larger formation, and they are going to receive reinforcements. So what is the point here? What is the only hope for the outnumbered English? To take down one of the standards that the French have, and so you're going after them. That is what represents the psychological effect that the President of Jeanne d'Arc had in the battlefield. So from the point of view of brute strength, if the English player lets the French get all the reinforcements that they have, then the French can just like slowly, painfully, but efficiently slaughter them. So the point is to go and try to slow down the enemy and try to attack that vital point of the French, because the special rule is precisely that the English win if they eliminate that standard. So very interesting situation, sort of asymmetrical. One is about violence, one is about catch the flag, pretty much. These are the four scenarios and how they work. The units in the game are divided in normal units and leaders. The units also have different types, such as cavalry, halberdiers, or militia. And then the numbers that you see here are the combat strength, the one all the way to the left, the quality rating that will produce modifiers during the game, and then we have the movement value. As for leaders, leaders have command rating, this number here is not strength, then range of command, so the distance up to which units in their command are effective, then we have movement points, and up here you have the bonus. Now, as for the sequence of a turn, it may sound a little convoluted, but you'll become familiar with it. At the beginning of a turn, you need to check command. Units need to be fully within the command of their commander. As you can see, they are also divided by groups, as indicated by those symbols that tell you whom they get orders from, and they need to be within the range of their commander to be fully effective. Then we have the artillery and archer fire. That is units that have the ability to launch range attacks, such as archers, and that asterisk there indicates that. are able to attack their enemies in this phase at the beginning of the turn before everybody else goes, but only if they don't have to move and they are not adjacent to enemy units. Then we have the initiative phase. Now, usually what happens is that during the game, the commanders will activate based on their command rating in ascending order. So lower is not as good because you go first, which seems like a good thing. Hey, first strike, but then the opponent can react, can outflank you, can do bad stuff. So it's better to go later. So first we start with all the leaders that have a rating of 1, then we go to leaders that have a command rating of 2, and then 3, and so on and so forth. It's also like the fact that the leaders, the turn is not just I go do all of my things, you go do all of your thing. Maybe you have a commander that does one thing, then we go back and forth. It's very, very lively turn structure. This is the general idea, but at the beginning of the turn, during the initiative phase, you roll dice, and based on the results, then one of the players may be able to activate a leader out of turn. So I like that. And on one hand, there's a general structure. You may expect certain leaders to act at a certain time and before or after other leaders, but you have a little bit of unpredictability there, so then the game doesn't feel too mechanics. It has a little bit of a unpredictability of warfare. And then we get to the main phase of the turn, which is movement and combat. That is, the leader that is activated activates the people in their formation, and those get to move and then to fight. And that's pretty standard. You move up to the full movement allowance of your units. You're trying possibly to place range units in a position where they'll be able to fight. It is also possible actually to use range units to move next to the opponent, unleash a volley of attack, and then still launch a melee attack as an attacker, although then with a penalty. Units can move only in their 3 frontal axes, and they can spend movement point to change their orientation. So you will be moving and of course attacking. There are charges that are available, so of course when you're attacking an enemy with a cavalry unit, and you can do that in certain terrains in a straight line, you get a mighty bonus. And for combat is really pretty simple to resolve. It's take into account all the modifiers, roll a die, and check a table. Of course, there is quite a number of modifiers, but after a while, you'll become familiar with them. They'll feel second nature, and I feel that they really help capturing the specificity of the combat, of the combat essentials of the time. First, you will get a modifier based on the odds ratio, simply strength, to see who is the most brutal and hardest hitter. Then, of course, you calculate the strength. The ratio between the strength of the attacker and that of the defender, and that will result into a modifier. And as I do that, then I start using my fingers to keep count of how many modifiers there are, because then of course I get a +2 here, then -1, then +3, then -2, and so on and so forth. Then what do we have? The modifiers, we'll look at the weapon matrix, and we cross-reference the type, the best type of unit of the attacker with that of the defender, and that results with cavalry versus cavalry is a 0, but if cavalry attacks militia, then it's a mighty bonus. Of course, if militia attacks cavalry or halberdiers, they get a penalty. So very, very neat, because we are at a time where indeed different units have such different abilities when it comes to the impact they can take, the damage, and the type of damage they can inflict, training. And so, militia versus big people on horses and wearing armor, well, that should give you different modifiers, so it works that way. Then we compare the quality of the unit, remember quality being one of the stats on the counters, and then we have the modifiers, including plus or minus the difference in bonus of all leaders. You may remember also that thing about the bonus of being one of the stats on the leaders, and then different things based on various conditions, such as the number of units that are attacking and the position, the placement, again charging or attacking from different from different positions. Also the condition of the attacker or the defender, whether or not they're discouraged. There is a counter for that. That is a condition that units may get in combat. Once you have your final modifier, then you simply roll a die, modify the result, and look at the effects for the defenders and the attackers. As you can see, they're qualitative effects. They change the status. You become discouraged. You become fatigued, maybe there's no effect, you had to retreat, and what you're really trying to do, the way you eliminate enemy units here is to rout them, and when they rout, they start running towards a specific location indicated in the scenario instruction. That's how you get them out from the main area of action. So it sounds a little bit complicated, and of course there are a couple of other things, but this is the general idea. So I like the system in general, and I like this implementation. But again, just about the system in general, since it's a while since I've been talking about it, I found in this set the things that I liked about the system in the past, which is in particular limited control. I like there is a healthy random element here, but not to the point that the game feels like you're just playing Yahtzee. It's random element that forces you to rethink your strategy as you go, to react to imponderable elements, as really, in my opinion, games about warfare should be. You shouldn't be able to plan too much ahead. You should, from time to time, have to deal with things that really did not go the way you expected. And here you have that element, of course, from the variable activation of the leaders. Nice balance between I can get a sense of what's going to happen, but then not entirely. You get that, of course, the die rolls, from the way the modifiers apply, from what's going to happen next. And then there is a certain level of chaos that happens coming from rules, very simple, about mandatory advance after combat. The opponents will often retreat. From time to time they'll start routing, and that also is chaotic, because when you rout you don't remove the piece from the board, but the unit that is routing starts running towards the location that the scenario indicates is where they run when they rout. And so you start having people that run away, then they try to come back, and then the unit that opened that breach in the line of the opponent keeps advancing, which really makes sense. You have these ginormous guys in these heavy cans, these huge heavy armors that are like trucks mowing down ranks of militia, of barely trained peasants, of archers. They shouldn't be able to pull the brake and stop right there as soon as they have disintegrated the opponent. And so you have the moment of elation as your cavalry inflicts a heavy damage on the opponent, until you realize that these guys can't stop and they keep going, and now all of a sudden they find themselves deep into the ranks of the opponent, and so the opponent now start converging over them, and now becomes numbers that overwhelm the quality, with all the bonuses that come from multiple attacks, ratio strength, attacking from the rear. And then, however, as in fact the opponent starts turning against that group of knights that went a little too far, now they're exposing their flank to the remaining of the army. So you really have interesting situations. Even the battles that at the beginning look like set pieces with just two lines opposing one another, and you think, oh, they're gonna get next to each other and slaughter each other and just gonna be attrition. Oh no, there's gonna be so much movement. Very often the battles break into small groups, and then there are a lot of interesting tactical options, as maybe the second line is deciding which of these foci of actions and chaos and madness they should go to reinforce. And every time you reinforce one side, you're exposing a flank, you're taking advantage of something, finding yourself threatened from the other direction. So it's really a situation that that works well in solitaire gaming, because you have a lot of interesting elements to analyze. There's a strong narrative that emerges as you see these groups interacting from one another. It's a tactically interesting situation, and again, you have enough modifiers, you have enough rules and wrinkles in the design that it's fun to try to take advantage of all the bonuses that you can, and it's fun to try to avoid giving too many bonuses to the opponent, exploiting the angle, exploiting the charge, with the caveat that who knows where you're gonna end when the charge is effective. Trying to create all of these tactical situations that are as advantageous as possible is fun. Then rolling the die and still getting the worst result possible under those circumstances, more fun. And from time to time your draw will drop. Again, it's more interesting elements to analyze and to react to in terms of gameplay. And all this again happens in a very manageable package. Once you become familiar with the list of modifiers for combat, bonuses and penalties, then is no problem. Then you will soon start seeing the forest instead of the trees. You won't go through the list. You'll know, okay, I'm from looking at this situation, I'm gonna try to get the flank and get that leader here, and I know it's gonna be good. It's gonna be better than this or that other thing. You really start seeing the tactics. You really start seeing the tactical opportunities. You don't lose your situational awareness by looking at endless lists of modifiers. So to me, the system really has this nice balance between enough detail and a lot of playability. More in general, this is a good package because the system here, the four battles that you have here based on the system, they have different flow, different situations, from, again, a little bit of a classic battle to extremely chaotic battle as it comes, as one army is trying to recover from the initial punch that they get from the rear. Very different situations, and so great play value, as one scenario doesn't feel like a copy of the previous one, and then within several scenarios you also have good replay value, as maybe you can explore several variants. The rule book, the scenario book itself provides you with some ideas on how to create variants. So you really have very good value here for the money. And for your time, you learn one game system, and you can play 4 battles that play differently from one another. And now you also have the foundation to go back and look at some of the older modules and try those too. So I'm very happy with by the edge of the sword system in general. I'm happy to see that the system is still strong. They didn't, I don't know, change it substantially. I didn't see any important change from the last time I played a couple of years ago. You never know. Maybe they're trying to improve it and it's worse. That was not the case. The system seemed to me as solid as it was when I used to play it a couple of years ago, and I really like these battles. So overall, high praise from me for Heroes and Kings. It can definitely be a good package for you to start with the system if you're not familiar with it, or in any case, if you're already a fan of the system, this is a solid new chapter in that series.